retail's hidden advantage, how RFID and computer vision radically improve the operational performance of retailers. And once again, this is a study that we did independently, looking at the data from that we did with RIS News. And the numbers were striking. And so you're going to see us say winners, leaders, profit leaders. We're going to use those interchangeably. I'll say below average, that would be a laggard as well. But when it comes to RFID, what we found is the people that grew their business 10% or more, the leaders that grew their sales in 23, 10% or more, were 32 times more likely to be using RFID today. And they're 20 times more likely to be investing in the next 12 months into RFID technology than the below average retailers. It was a striking difference there. And when we looked at the profits as well, 57% higher profits for those that were already using RFID, and 88% expected profits in 24, higher profits there when they are not used, or when they plan to use RFID if they're already using it today. Excuse me. So it's this is the one on the right is related to profits expected in 24 if they were already using RFID going into 24 here. So just massive increases related to RFID. So what are all the different ways that RFID are being used? Well, it's being used in a lot of different ways and a lot of different things for things there. Walmart and Target, the inventory accuracy, they're on record is saying that their inventory accuracy went from mid 60s to high 90s. Walmart claimed 95%. Target claimed it went up to 98% on the tagged items that they had with RFID. Now, Walmart, a big thing this week, they were using RFID for self-checkout. And one of the things that I want to say here is RFID in and of itself is not a complete solution for inventory for a mass retailer like this. And the reason for that is the challenges related to liquid, related to heavy, dense metals, and things like that. Anything that is a reflective nature, like a mirror, they all impact the readability of a tag. And thus, in a mass merchant environment, if you're trying to use it for checkout, you're susceptible to having misreads there and not being able to catch all the items because of the fact that the liquids and other things that are there. So their pulling out the self-checkout was not a big surprise because it doesn't necessarily work in that environment. Zara has been a leader in RFID just throughout their entire supply chain. They've been using it for years with like H&M. Uniqlo probably is best known for that, though, for checkout. And that's the one self-checkout that people really love. At least the press really loves self-checkout in that environment. Macy's 50% reduction in shrinkage, they claim, through the use of RFID there. So major impacts there, major impacts related to inventory accuracy and loss prevention there. RFID in and of itself is necessarily a loss prevention technology, but it does help you figure out when something's stolen, where you last saw it within your supply chain for things there. So that's a big deal. And certainly it's being used as a way to do self-checkout in specialty, particularly specialty apparel, where it's much faster and can move people in and out very quickly for that. So let's look at computer vision. We see similar kind of impact. The sales leaders were 34 times more likely to already be using some sort of computer vision in their operations. And they're actually 35% more likely to be investing in the next 12 months than the laggards there. And I see a little thing. This should be more likely, not less likely, in terms of the investment for 24 in the technology. When we look at the profit winner, similarly, 43% more likely to be using computer vision, those that had 10% profit growth in 23 there. And they're 75% more likely to be using it within the next 12 months and making a purchase of computer vision and further investments there. So those are big deals and significant impacts on what's going on from a profitability standpoint. Now, the computer vision can be all over the place. There are so many different use cases for computer vision, everything from product recognition. You've got produce recognition. You've got loss prevention things there to identify and track products in real time. You can monitor the shelf conditions there. Symbi Robotics being a sponsor here with their Tally robots and some of their other solutions to be able to look at what's going on at the shelf and detect issues that need to be refilled there. You've got customer analytics by analyzing behavior in reviewing things like heat maps and looking at what people are doing there. Certainly checkout systems. We're looking at different levels of computer vision to do receipt check. Sam's is doing that as a receipt check now. But then you've also got it in terms of how do you prevent theft? How do you find exceptions at self-checkout there for those sort of things? So lots of different ways it's being used there. Just the priorities of these things for both of them. The leaders are prioritizing their deployments of these at much higher rates as we go forward than the below average performers. So we ask priorities. What are your priorities, your tech priorities for 24? And the sales leaders, 3.3 times higher, more likely to be investing in RFID than others. And for computer vision, 1.8 times higher priority percentage than the below average performers of what they're doing. So these technologies are only seeing results. They're seeing higher investments that are going in there. But it's not just these technologies. There are correlations with others that we found in the research here. First, these systems require high speed, low latency, and reliable processing and networks. So everything in terms of network upgrades as well as edge computing is huge. But not just putting that processing at the edge. You've got to have an edge solution there that you can improve the speed, the cost, the accuracy there, but you can do it reliably. Because the more you rely on this data, the more important it is that the infrastructure that you put in place to take advantage of this is reliable and it's not going to shut you down. There's a lot of things that are happening there with these technologies and a lot of use cases and a lot of financial benefit. And that infrastructure is just an absolute crucial piece of what's going on and what needs to be done. So what we found, not surprisingly, is the people that were using RFIDs are 10 times more likely to already be using edge computing, and the computer vision folks 7 times more likely to be using edge computing. And let me explain kind of how that gets used. The most important thing for RFID is you really don't care which tag didn't move when you have a read. You're most interested in is what tags moved, what tags changed, because otherwise your counts don't change. And so you've got to process that information locally. You don't want to burden the network with all of that information. And on computer vision, you also just the sheer amount of bandwidth that is required to process video. You want to be doing that on the edge because you really can't build a network that processes all of that in the cloud in real time when you have a lot of different cameras that are doing computer vision. So you need to do that at the store level, at the device level. It could be at the physical device level. It can be at the access point as well, or it could be at a back office server. But you want to be, once again, looking for those exceptions in deciding what you store and what you don't. So with both of these, you've got a storage component to it. And certainly in computer vision, it's a massive storage component to that. So you want to be able to have a lot of compression. You have to have a lot of storage, and you have to have a lot of processing to be able to do this at a local basis so that you don't burden all the networks upstream with that. Then there's also a surprising connection with point of sale technologies. what we found really interesting is that the people using RFID were 3.6 times more likely to be up to date. I'm sorry, they're more likely to be updating their point of sale hardware and their point of sale software in 24, related to that. So we're seeing, once again, more and more of the RFID moving towards a point of sale impact and a point of sale opportunity, not just at the store. So there's a lot of reasons to update the point of sale hardware and software. Certainly some of the AI impacts that are now starting to come into play there are having an impact as well. The cleanliness of the data that's coming out of those systems. But you are also looking at things that are related to RFID, and there's a correlation there that we found. Also, computer vision. The people that are using computer vision already are 2 times more likely to be updating their POS hardware in 24, and they're 41% more likely to be updating their software in 2024 for point of sale. So there's an interesting combination there and correlation related to that. That we didn't necessarily think of when we started off looking at this data. There's also a correlation in terms of computer vision that's kind of strange here, and that is how much more likely these digital journeys that have a store component are updated already or optimized already. What we've seen in grocery in particular, but this applies to every segment, is there's a dramatic loss of margin if you have not optimized these digital journeys. The average grocery store that was not charging for delivery and was doing all the picking themselves and it had not optimized their local delivery was losing up to 15 points of margin versus a walk-in customer there. So it's not a surprise that computer vision, particularly computer vision that's tied to inventory accuracy, is a key function that is in place and that's been invested in there. But in many cases, it's related not only to the in-store shopper, but how they use the stores for those fulfillment of digital journeys along the way. So some overall trends that are impacting here. We have new ultra-high frequency RFID tags in the last several years that makes the accuracy better and the range longer to be able to do things, and you've got higher data capacity as well. We have RFID tags that you can now turn off and on, which is really interesting when you start looking at return fraud, because you now have the ability to say that this was never in my supply chain when somebody tries to return things, if you choose to take those kind of tags. The other thing is the combination of these two technologies together. As I mentioned, neither in and of itself is a complete solution. Computer vision has some issues with depth of field and can't see through things in many cases. Then RFID has issues related to metals and liquids. Generally, when these are put together, you have a better solution for each of these use cases. And so we start seeing more smart shelves now, carts. We've got mirrors in fitting rooms now where the RFID tag can just say this is what it would look like if you use this one or this RFID tag in that environment. So it's also allowing more accurate real-time inventory visibility. And then even more now, we're starting to see some personalized offers that are being offered through some of these technologies. And all of this also, it starts to enable and help with as retailers roll out AI and machine learning, not only in their inventory and inventory accuracies there, but also related to their to what they're doing in generative AI to improve the visibility to customers of inventory data, but also associates, which is where a lot of these Gen AI improvements are having a major impact. The main thing to do here, though, is we want to share is that, and sorry a second, I'm going to share the slides and let you guys download the slides and the report now as we're getting to the end. I wanted to make that available to you here. The data is clear on these technologies. RFID and computer vision, they're having dramatic impacts financially, but we're really in the early innings here. RFID, we're in the middle innings. If we're going to use this baseball metaphor, they're fourth and fifth inning for things there. But for computer vision, we're pretty much just slightly ahead of generative AI at this point. We are in the first or second inning. There are a lot of improvements there. And just the same way that AI is moving from a language model to a multimodal to an action model to imitation models, these technologies are going to see massive improvements as they move forward. What's really, really fascinating here to me is the way that Tesla is doing their latest self-driving technology that they're training. They originally did it as they were writing the lines of code. So you would write the code in C++. Hey, this is a stoplight. This is a corner. This is etc. And what you get is something that doesn't take into all considerations, but it also doesn't, you end up with spaghetti code. And you've got this massive amount of compute that's required to run it in real time, not only just train it, but to run it in real time in the cars. They moved a couple years ago to now this imitation model now that allows it to, they upload all the sensor data and all the camera data from their best drivers, and then the computers write the code based on what's going on. And it's a massive improvement. And we're starting to see those improvements regarding AI as we go from these large language models to multimodal. Now we see with DALL-E to now Rabbit here with action models, where there's going to be actions, or just say, order me an Uber to LaGuardia, and it'll do it automatically. We're starting to see that technology start to be deployed now to longer term imitation models, where it actually imitates you as a human being and how you do these things. All of those will take advantage of computer vision type technologies to make that work. And it's a massive improvements from where we are today. So with that, we are going to move to the Q&A period. We're going to turn our cameras back on for that. The slides are there. The handouts are there for things. So let me turn the camera back on, invite Jerry back. I want to thank everybody for your attention and being here. Jerry, what do we got for questions?
Man, chat was on fire. Gosh, it was it was fantastic. I mean, we were rocking and rolling there. So I want to thank everybody for their engagement. There were some great questions that came across. Going to tee up the first one here from John. He said, as a 20-year veteran of RFID development, I'm wondering about the correlation and causation. Winners may be simply the far-sighted organizations and seeking every advantage, RFID, CV, BOPUS. The losers may be caught in kind of a downward spiral and don't have the money nor time, attention to do anything more than just fight daily battles. RFID implementation may be a leading indicator or the growing digital divide in the industry. So kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. It's hard to say, is it correlation or causation?
Right.
And I want to be careful in how I phrase that. Yeah, this data is very strong on a correlation standpoint. And I've said this time and time again, that we've been in this race, and it really started happening in about 2017, 2018. The leading retailers, the best performing retailers, divorced their IT spend from sales growth. And they started making digital investments to improve their operations because they needed to compete with Amazon. And at that time, it became a foot race. They were investing more each year and growing their spend more each year. And as a result, it was kind of like me racing Usain Bolt in the 100 meters. He's not only ahead in the first step, he's ahead every step he takes there. And that's what we're starting to see. So one of the fascinating things is we've got these overall trends, and then we have what the leaders are doing. And we find that inventory visibility, investments in inventory visibility, the leaders are actually spending less money on that going into 24, even though that's the number one thing. And the reason for that is they made those investments already.
Right. Already spent that money.
Exactly. They're on to bigger and better things
right
at that point in time. So that is the that is the key thing. So
I mean, just a great question. Definitely causation versus correlation. We're definitely seeing, I know as we've talked about AI quite a bit, we're at a place where if you're investing, the big are getting bigger, and there's definitely, it seems to be a larger chasm between the haves and the have-nots, and technology being a big sort of driver behind that. The next question coming in from Donna, just wondering where the non-apparel industry is in the adoption curve, and I think this was relative to RFID. There was quite a few comments in the chat around, the apparel industry and some of the cool things. I know you mentioned Zara. We were talking about Uniqlo in the chat, but for the non-apparel industry, where and how are you seeing RFID being utilized?
Well, I think, like I said, I think it's a combined solution here in a lot of cases, and it's not so much RFID. I don't know if RFID can be a checkout technology, let's say in the drugstore market completely, because of the products that they have that RFID doesn't work for. However, when you get to the cosmetics there, when you've got packaged products related to that, all the drugs related to those things that are boxed, you have the ability there. The challenge that you have with RFID, and although you can buy more expensive tags, as we reduce packaging for environmental purposes, taking boxes out, we actually create a harsher environment for RFID in those kind of environments. And so those are the challenges that we face. So I think there's opportunities in drugstores. I think in the mass merchants, there's huge opportunities for all the categories that aren't the liquids, that aren't the the heavy metals. I would encourage retailers, where the margins support it, and to definitely do RFID in those environments, because of the fact that just the improvements in inventory accuracy and inventory visibility are so strong. One of the huge benefits that RFID brought is ship from store. And it's knowing that product's that's supposed to be on the shelf is in the dressing room, or it's in a pile coming out of the dressing room. It hasn't been put back on the shelf again, but it's still in the store. That knowledge is crucial if you have a ship from store transaction that's required. And those are the kind of things where RFID is pretty huge. So when you look at that mass merchant environment there, you probably have about 70%, maybe 75% of the products that can be tracked with RFID, and you can see those benefits. You just can't see 100% in those environments. And same with your DIY space. Although you've got so much metals, it may be only 40% or 50% in that environment for that. So those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I'm a big order management homer, and I know when you go look at the economic impact of, if you have perfect or near perfect inventory visibility in a store, what you're able to do with your safety stock levels is really transformational to a retailer's bottom line. So, there's a massive opportunity there from an ROI perspective in those applications. Another question here is can one of you there was a fair amount of comments on your trueflation numbers. So this comment was from Eric relative to that. It said, can one of you comment on the effect of shrinkflation, which is a relatively new phenomenon, on what the government says and what trueflation says?
Well, so I don't know how the government and truflation, I don't know how they do the shrinkflation there. I can tell you the reason for shrinkflation. The CEO of Mondelez shared this on CNBC, and it was really interesting. He says, it's the only way we can continue to have things at a certain price point is if we shrink the product to meet that price point, because we know as soon as we up the price or go over a certain price, demand drops considerably for our product. And so that is what's driven the shrinkflation from a CPG standpoint, is trying to hit that price point in the mind of the consumer for things. We've seen it with like the dollar menus at restaurants, fast food restaurants there. as the drink went from $1 to $1.45 at McDonald's, they're starting to see a dramatic drop in the amount of people that get the drink for that come in the afternoons to get the drink. Those sort of things, when you raise those prices, are having a big thing. I mean, we just saw today Dollar Tree is closing 1,000 stores. That's the first time we've seen anything in the dollar store environment of anything shrinking back. And part of that is they were no longer able to keep the dollar price point. They went to $1.25, but they still have trouble getting labor as well as getting the products to keep the stores full with products in that environment. So they're facing a little less demand than maybe they've seen in the past because the price point's not the same anymore. But you've also got less labor and less product.
Is that you think the Dollar Tree announcement, you think that's a trend, an aberration? Is it the canary in the coal mine relative to the dollar, that big dollar store space?
No, I think the general trend right now, because how tough it is, particularly those on fixed income, is a trend that's moving more towards that. We see it with Target to Walmart. Walmart's business is growing. Target is shrinking. Now Target's got some political issues and things that they've had to deal with and that sort of thing. But nobody trades down to a Target. That's part of the problem. They're the Targets in the minds of consumers is the premium mass merchant. But you don't trade down. When you trade down from a department store, you don't trade down to Target. You trade down to a TJ Maxx and a Burlington, et cetera, like that. But people do trade down to the dollar stores, and they do trade down to Aldi and et cetera there. So look at Aldi. Aldi's 800 announced just 800 more stores in the U.S. So I don't think it's the genre per se. I think there are operational issues where they can't get enough workers for the number of stores. They expanded too many there. They can't get the stuff. They're dealing with lots of theft around the nation on products as well. So all of that plays a role.
I had a great question come in from Justin. Justin asked, which applications do you see computer vision gaining the most traction or adoption today? Be that maybe product recognition, shelf analytics, customer analytics, frictionless checkout, LP?
All the above. The key number one driver right now is LP. Yeah, where we're seeing it. And you could argue whether or not it's working or not. We're going to be putting some new research out probably in the next month, a little over a month here on that issue. And that's why I wanted to say that we're really in the second inning for this. There are massive improvements in terms of how you process, what kind of cameras you use, the angles of cameras. Can you do things with multiple cameras that see a lot better and do the LP piece a lot better? But at the end of the day, honestly, if you're not going to prosecute and you're not going to arrest, you just say, hey, there it is. Okay, great. They stole it. On the LP stuff, if you guys didn't see the story yesterday on CNBC, it's out there. It was on NBC News last night as they broke up a big ring on organized retail crime. It's a really good insight there. Also, I wanted to take a moment. If you guys are following AI and stuff like that, I highly encourage you guys to listen to the B2G podcast with Brad Gershner. If you're not listening to that, that is just fabulous podcast to keep up to speed on what's coming in AI.
Yeah, it was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, speaking of LP, I had to go to Home Depot and buy a weed eater. Mine had died. So go to buy it, and there's a big gate there. So you have to spend 10 minutes tracking somebody down to unlock it, and then they get to walk it up to the customer service desk for you. I couldn't even keep it in my buggy, so I had to do some more shopping and then pick it up at the customer service desk. So times are definitely a change in there. The next question comes from, I'm going to sort of reword another question that came from Donna. But it really kind of much in the same vein. It's today, where do you see retailers find the biggest value from implementing the use of RFID? Do you think that's supply chain? Do you think that's in the store, or do you think that's elsewhere?
Um, it used to be supply chain. I think it's more at the store now on
Hmm.
an every unit item key benefit. And the reason I say that is on the barcode side, particularly with GS1 and what's coming down with GS1, a lot of the supply chain benefits can be done through barcodes, kind of rolling up the RFID tags to the barcode. Um, we've got this new use case, so to speak, of these digital journeys that the pandemic put on hyper growth. Knowing where your product is and whether you really have it is absolutely crucial
Hmm.
to anything that is fulfillment from the stores. Not only meeting the needs of the customers that walk in, but doing that, and particularly when you're getting to SKU level stuff, that underlying knowing exactly what color and size that you have. It's one thing to see, that it's on the rack or we've got 10 black dresses, but do you know what size they are for each
Right.
one of those? And with the level of theft, it's really hard to see and track that when it's a UPC type of thing and you're related on scan stuff. So,
Um, Actually, kind of in follow up to that, talking about RFID in the store, specifically around checkout. I know you'd mentioned during the talk some of the changes that Walmart's making with regards to RFID at checkout. So, what do you think the future of RFID in checkout looks like?
I think it's going to be, mostly going to be a fashion related thing. I see it being a pretty significant thing at, say, your theme parks, your Disney's, type of thing where you're going to theme parks and stuff like that. I see computer vision being the primary technology when you're dealing with liquids. So when you think of just walk out technology at stadiums or other places like that, it's going to be more computer vision in that environment than it is RFID. Um, but yeah, so I think it's going to have a major impact where the tags can get 95, 98% of the merchandise
Hmm.
can be tagged. Um, yeah.
Big shout out to Orlando City. Orlando City Soccer became the first sports venue in the United States with just walkout technology. Go City. Um, Next question here. Um, what can solution providers and end users do to help address computer vision privacy concerns with the public? I know we were watching World News Tonight a couple of nights ago, and they had uh, one of their early stories in the newscast was around computer vision and privacy. So it really seems to be getting kind of elevated in the public eye.
Um, yeah, I think there's different aspects of computer vision. Um, and I think we're going to see a privacy, we're on a pendulum related to privacy. And I think it's different in Europe than it is in the US. We've moved to this massive privacy thing. And I think this, not to get all political, but the House passed the TikTok thing today, banning TikTok today. Aspect at the root of that in their mind is privacy and who gets the data, who controls the data from the House. I think we're going to see this pushback from users that say, "Don't take away my TikTok," Um, so
Don't take away my TikTok.
I don't know the answer to that when it comes to your behaving honestly. And I think that's where anonymizing the data and that sort of stuff is a big deal. However, that being said, if you're breaking the law and you're stealing stuff there, where does your privacy end and you know the government or the law enforcement take over? And it's a slippery slope. I mean, because in China you've got facial recognition that is being used massively for
Right.
that. And now you travel even in the States or others, you you get on the airplane. I flew to Liberia and went to Liberia. I checked in the plane with a camera.
Right.
They didn't even look at my boarding pass. I walked up to the camera, I took a video image of me. So yeah, if you want to travel or you want to do things, you're kind of giving up that privacy to be able to do certain things. So I don't think there's one right answer. I think it's dependent on what it is, and how the data is being used. And I think it's somewhat fascinating. We've got the privacy related to your phone and your Wi-Fi or whatever. When you walk into a retailer, they're not allowed to track you, but
Right.
goodness, all you got to do is mention, hey, we want to go to dinner tonight, and I'm thinking barbecue, and my phone's picked up already, and I'm going to get all the ads for the local barbecue joints
Right.
that are there. So,
yeah, I think we have time for kind of one more question, kind of a funny question, I guess we'll say. The truthflation numbers are startling. Any chance you think the Fed starts using truthflation numbers instead of the Commerce Department numbers anytime soon?
yeah, I think the challenge with the government numbers right now is the participation rate in all of their surveys used to be 65 to 70% or higher. And what they do is they do a survey like we just shared you a survey. And if I extrapolated to the market to say, you know what, RFID is going to grow 32 times, based on a number there, it would be wildly off. But that's how the government does our employment surveys and does even retail sales. So what's happening in the last year, because of that sample difference, and there could be partisanship. I'm not going that way. We get a bait and switch. The first headline number is extremely positive, and then they correct it in subsequent months. 12 of the last 12 job numbers that have come out have been corrected down to the point where 30% of the jobs that were so-called created went away the next month. And so I wish they would. And that's why I love the fact that the NRF and CNBC has their thing. But even those, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that same, and maybe it's where I live, I'm not seeing that same volumes of growth that they shared, at least in the February numbers that they came out with yesterday. I'm just not seeing it walking around.
Right.
And looking at the retail numbers. So.
Yeah, it feels different. I don't know. It definitely feels different. That brings us actually a minute past the top of the hour, and that's the last of the questions that we had.
Yeah. Hey, thanks again, everybody. Once again, appreciate you taking the time. If we can do this for your company, or you want to be a part of that, please let us know. We would be happy to do that. Thanks so much. Hope you guys have a great rest of the spring break period and enjoy March Madness. Take care.